Welcome to CMO School. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to find your ideal client as a fractional CMO and some red flags to avoid because the wrong client can totally derail your business, your confidence, and your sanity when you're doing this work. It's so easy, I think, when you get started as a fractional CMO to be tempted to say yes to any lead that comes your way or try and make things work to just get your first few clients. But I will say the right clients makes your work so much easier. You get better results and you end up in a business model that is so much more sustainable. So I'm going to be breaking down in this episode today how to identify your ideal clients as a fractional CMO, the red flags that signal this is not a good client, the hard lessons I have learned from working with clients who are not the right fit, and the filters I now use to make sure I'm saying yes to the right clients. So, if you're looking to attract the right clients, set up a model that works really well for you, this is going to be a great episode. Let's get into it. So, there are 5 main things that I look at and that I have learned to look for when I'm considering whether someone is a fit for a fractional CMO and a fit for me to lead them. So I'm going to walk you through all of them. Number 1 is revenue. And it blows my mind, actually, how many people will work with clients doing marketing or especially fractional CMO work and have no idea where the company's revenue and profit margins are sitting. If you take one thing from this episode, it is that you need to know and understand revenue as a marketing leader for your clients. So, why this is important, there's so many reasons. Number 1, if you're working with a client who doesn't have enough revenue, and profit margins really come into play here, but you want to have a client who has enough revenue to do things in marketing. At the beginning, I remember taking on a client who had no budget to hire anyone and also just not really any marketing budget in general. So I could come in and see all of this opportunity within their business and lots of different ways that I would market their business and grow and drive revenue. But it was really, really hard to drive results for them because the founder did not have a marketing background and they had just such a small budget. So it was just very, very difficult for them to actually execute well on the strategy I had put together. So that makes a big, big difference. Then I think it's also really important from the revenue perspective to understand profit margins, because if I take my niche, for example, I work with a lot of creator-led businesses with digital products. And the reason I really love that space is because you can have a $1 million, $2, $3, $4, $5 million business with very high profit margins. I'm saying, 80%, let's say, which is great. That gives them lots of money to play with in marketing and actually execute on some powerful strategies, whether that is ads or bringing in a copywriter to do a page. There's so many things within your marketing strategy that are going to cost them money. So you want to make sure they can actually afford to execute. And I find when a company has lower profit margins, I've worked with some product-based e-commerce businesses in this role before at even higher revenue levels than my creator-led brands, but they have such small margins that when you look at the end of the day, the profit they're extracting from the business is so much smaller. So they ultimately don't have a lot of wiggle room within marketing either. So those are very, very important things to ask. The other thing is I always ask about revenue history. Like, we want to understand the lay of the land. Where are we right now? And we want to know if they are growing or not. Are they in a decline? Has there been something that's impacted the business or the industry? Because something for you to decide as a CMO is if you want to be the fix-it CMO or not. That is something very early on I decided is not me. I am not the savior that comes in and turns the business around. If a business is in decline, I'm looking at revenue year over year and things are declining, or let's say their flagship product or their main offerings are in decline, that's just not the space I like to work in. I much prefer working with companies who are growing or have steady state revenue, because my goal really is to come in and take the reins of marketing and give the CEO or the visionary their time back. So they're not hiring me to rescue their business and come in and turn things around. Granted, I am always trying to drive sales and growth, but The primary reason they're hiring me is because they usually are sitting in that CMO seat and they want someone else who is experienced in marketing to come in, come up with the strategy so they don't have to do it, and lead their team and make sure that it still is driving amazing performance. And then kind of ladder back to them and say, hey, this is what's going on with marketing. This is what you need to know, but you don't actually have to be in the day to day because I've got it for you. It's really about, for me anyways, them bringing me in and knowing that things are being taken care of and maintained or growing, not, having to hand it off and hope that somebody junior can kind of keep things flowing while they, get some time back to be the visionary in their business. So again, thinking about if you want to be the fix-it CMO. When I see revenue declines, I am running the other way. The next thing I will ask about is team. So again, we want to make sure that your clients you're working with as a fractional CMO has the right team who executes. And I could probably break this down in a lot more detail, but what you want to be thinking through, and it's going to sort of differ depending on the niche you're in, but you want to make sure anything you're putting together, they have the capacity to execute on themselves well. So they either have in-house people that can execute on the strategy, or they have the budget to hire. Because, remembering what our role is as fractional CMOs, we are not project managers and we are not doing or executing on any of the marketing. So we are putting together the plan, we're setting the measurable goals, we are looking at data and analytics and making informed decisions. We are leading the team and unblocking them, but we are not executing and project managing. So you want to make sure those roles are filled. And I find I talk all the time to people who don't even ask these questions, and then they end up working with a client and saying, yeah, there was nobody to do this part or that part. And I know how to do that. So I just jumped in, because if I don't, then the strategy won't actually go well. And if nobody does it, then it's not going to work and drive results. And then they'll be unhappy with me. So that's the kind of situation you do not want to create. I have definitely been there. We had a client a few years ago who, when we started, the team setup was actually exactly what we needed it to be. And someone ended up being let go. Probably a month or so into us starting out with her company. And she kept saying she would replace this person, but then never did. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we were unable to drive results in her company because she did not have the right people. She had one person who was trying to do literally everything in marketing, and it ended up just being such a disaster because this person was stretched so thin and had no capacity. So there was just all these gaps and all these things that would fall through the cracks. And ultimately, she wasn't willing to hire or take our advice on what was needed to be done from a team structure. So that made a big deal and a difference in their results. And ultimately, that engagement ended up ending on not the best note on either side, because she was unhappy and we were sitting there saying we weren't set up for success. Like, we didn't have the ingredients necessary to thrive and do well and drive results here. So team is so important. Next, I always look at the type of offerings or products that they are selling. For example, and the considerations that you want to think about there. So for example, if you're looking at e-commerce and thinking about, oh, maybe I'll specialize in those brands, that is a very, most of the time, high volume, lots of customers style of business. There's things around Christmas and weekends and all of these things that, you might need to be online and available for. So thinking through the business model, what are they selling? What are their products and offers and their market? And what's kind of the natural sales cycle? And what does that mean for me and the expectations and how I might need to work with this client? So that's always really, really important. Then I also think too, it's important to ask yourself and think through how is this thing sold and marketed, and is that something you want to do? So if you're signing up to work with a bunch of clients who have live launches, but that exhausts you, or maybe you find that high pressure environment to be really stressful, then maybe that's not the right niche for you. Or same thing with e-commerce. If you don't really want to have to be available over the holidays because of Christmas and New Year sales and things like that. Again, like maybe that's just not the niche for you. And thinking through what they're selling to in relation to the market. Like, is this something that is kind of dying out? Is it going away? Like, what's going on in the global economy and the market that might influence sales and marketing in relation to this type of business? Next thing here would be company phase. So this is going to be so unique to where you feel like you want to contribute and add value and what you feel is best suited for you and your experience. But there's everything from startups who haven't sold anything and have just gotten funding, or they're trying to get funding, all the way through to big, well-established companies that have been around for a long time. And I would say there's no right or wrong here, and it really depends on your experience and the niche that you are in. But I think there's some considerations to keep in mind. So if you're working with a startup who has some funding, you want to think through and ask about the runway that they have. So how long is that funding supposed to last? And how much of that can be allocated towards marketing? And what's their team growth plan? And all of these types of things. And then another thing that I think is really important when it comes to the company phase is where they are at with product market fit. So have they sold the thing? Have they actually sold to customers and got proof of concept? Because it is one thing to be, let's say, coming in and pouring fuel on the fire. So stepping into a business that's already selling something and figuring out how do we do more or better here. It's a completely different thing to come into a company who is launching something brand new and has never sold it. And I will say that neither is right or wrong as a fractional CMO, and there's definitely space for both types, but it's just a different type of work. And it's also a different timeline and expectation. So, you want to make sure your client also understands, especially with the types of products that have not sold yet, there is going to be a longer lead time or window before you're going to start seeing traction and results. And there's often an experimental phase where you're trying to figure out the right messaging and the right sales mechanism and all of those types of things that until you kind of quote unquote crack it and figure out what is the right play here. And all of those pieces are so important to consider when you're looking at, where is a company at? And lastly, this is thing that I think is absolutely the most important when I think about bringing on clients. So I will say it's the vibes or values of the client, which can sometimes be hard to know at the start, but I'll tell you how I sort of filter for that at the beginning. So I really do believe energy is so important. And I've learned over the last number of years to really start tapping into and trusting my intuition a lot more when it comes to clients and work and life in general. And so I am paying attention to that a lot when I'm doing discovery calls and sales calls, and really just trying to tap into how does it feel to interact with this person? Does it feel like they are collaborative? Does it feel like they are listening and open? And does it feel like they are in general a good person who is maybe values aligned with me? A lot of sales people will say not to chit chat and to keep it quite businessy, but I do weave in a little bit of let's say chit chat and non-work related pieces, because I really want to know and understand a little bit about this person and try to get a gauge on who are they outside of work and how do they treat people and what's important to them. So I think that's really, really important. And I'll share a story of working with a client who vibes and values were not aligned with me and just what that did to myself and our team. So we had a client who was just such a mismatch when it came to vibes and values. It was one of those things where I was earlier on in doing this kind of work, and so I hadn't quite learned all of these lessons yet. And she had said to us, we had launched something new for her. We'd come in and she had this really successful kind of bread and butter product flagship offer. And she wanted to launch something totally different, like a full 180 from what she was teaching. So we said, okay, I can see the connect, but this is very different. Your audience right now is coming to you for XYZ. This is very different. So it's going to take some trial and error. We want to see, how the market responds and just validate this offer. And here's our goals. And so we had our goals of what we thought was realistic. She had hers. They were not aligned, but we went into the launch anyways. And the launch didn't perform to the level that she wanted it to. It definitely hit the goals that we wanted it to. And it performed to actually a really great level for something brand new in a totally different space. And we did a pretty big launch debrief, and we said, okay, look, this is what we learned about messaging and what's resonating. And this is what we learned as far as this launch and sales mechanism that may have worked over here for these reasons, but isn't really working over here, and what we want to do next time. And all of this analysis and recommendations were very much data backed. And we'd put together this big strategy for her, and she would not let us even walk through it. And she looked at us and she said, I don't believe in data. In that moment, I just knew this has turned sour. We ended up just ending that engagement. And in retrospect, I look back and I think there was some earlier warning signs I didn't quite pay attention to, but that person ended up just being so nasty toward the end and really misaligned when it came to what values we believed in as marketing leaders on our team, and just really misaligned too in how to treat people, how to talk to people, and really what was the right thing to do. And so this is why this is my number one filter. If there is ever anything off with the vibes, it's just a no for me. I don't know if you may have heard my story the other day on Instagram. I had a very, very well-known brand creator. It was floated by me as so-and-so is looking for something, and I think I should introduce you guys. And I actually met this person earlier this year at an event, and she was not nice at all. Very different than she is online. And so I said to this person who was trying to pass me this lead, I said, you know what? Not worth it. I don't want to talk to her. I know her energy. I've met her. I know how she treats people. And I know what I'm hearing from you in terms of what she was saying on the sales call, that this will not be a match for us from a values perspective. Yes, we could probably help her, but no amount of money is worth my sanity and, our team's peace. And so I'm just always screening for that. And I no longer have the capacity or availability to entertain clients that just don't fit into those pieces. All right. So I think that is all the pieces, all the things I would share, everything that we look at when we're considering whether a client is a good fit or not. And I can't stress this enough. The wrong client can cost you so much and really cause you to doubt your ability to drive results, your ability in this role, whether you like it. So if you're ever in those situations, make sure you're asking yourself, is it me or is it the client? Make sure you're understanding maybe you are just working with the wrong clients. So many of you that I know burn out in these fractional roles or say, I don't like it. It's because you're not working with the right client. They don't have the right team. They don't have the right resources. And neither one of you have clarity on what your role is supposed to be and not. So if you're spinning your wheels, trying to make it work, it's not, this is just a really, really good thing to check in with yourself on. So if you're building a fractional CMO business and you don't want to waste years figuring it out the hard way, Fractional CMO School is open for enrollment, and we'll give you the step-by-step roadmap that I used to build my business to 6 figures in 6 months and then $1 million per year with a small team of 2. There's expert coaching, one-on-one support, and whether you are an aspiring fractional CMO or you're growing, you're trying to figure out how to scale your team or do the role in a way that doesn't lead to burnout, it is a great fit for you. And you can learn more at thecmooffice.com. If you love this episode today, here is what I would love from you. Take 30 seconds to rate and review the show. It helps more marketers and CMOs find this content. Hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're going to implement any of this or you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out in my DMs on Instagram. I would love to support you. And thank you for listening. I will see you next week.